Okay, so of course, as usual, I want to start with this, right? Finding the light through the darkness, because the Zohar teaches us that light can only come out of darkness. So if a person feels they're missing anything, the only place you can find it is in the darkness of your life, where you have fear or jealousy or insecurity or difficult situations, etc. That's the only place that the light can hide or be hidden, is in the darkness. So of course I opened it up, and this is what Karen's sharing with us. Let's face it, we all judge. We take a look at people and we somehow make ourselves more by making others less. We do this by telling ourselves they do things we would never do. Yet if we lived we lived the same way they do, if we went through what they went through, we might be a lot like them. The problem with judgment is that it fills us up, and then we have no place for love. We get so full of ourselves, who we think we are, what we believe we are entitled to, that there is no space for others, and more importantly, there is no space for God. Spiritual work, as explained by the Kabbalists, is the work of developing ourselves to become like the Creator. When we behave as the light does, we actually bring light into our being. Rav Ashlag explains that this understanding comes from the spiritual concept called similarity of form. Indeed, and this is a quote from Rav Ashlag, indeed, a closeness between spiritual bodies is a matter of similarity of form, just as love is a similarity of form and opinions, while hate is the opposite. Consequently, the moment you cancel the desire to receive within you, you bring your spiritual body closer to the Creator's essence, because you are totally in the aspect of sharing with others, which is the equivalent of giving pleasure to your Maker. This is the intention you want to fulfill, so that you will be prepared for the ultimate purpose of creation. And of course, it fits right with our topic this morning, or this afternoon. There we go. Consciousness is everything. I raise my consciousness today to see the miracles and wonders of life. I commit myself to behave with greater love, compassion, and kindness towards all human beings. And for sure we need it now, do we not? Yeah. Exactly. So let's get started with this morning. The message of today. When I was in college, we studied the theory of evolution. To this day, it's still the theory, but there are people who hold to that theory. And what do those who tell us they believe in evolution say? This theory of Darwin. There's a whole process, right? It's a process of evolution. It's an evolutionary development from chemicals to microbes to plants, animals, etc., till we get to human beings. That's the theory of evolution. Along the way, what do they tell us, which we'll get to today spiritually? Survival of the fittest, right? That's how evolution seems to work, survival of the fittest. But let me ask you, according to the theory of evolution, what's the end? What's the goal? What's the final point? They have none. It's just on and on and on and on. So where does it lead us? We have no idea. We have no idea according to that theory. Now, the Kabbalah Center, if you've taken Kabbalah 1, you already know. We understand it. We'll discuss it briefly today. We know where the end of this evolutionary process goes. We know what its purpose is. So let's just start with that idea of process. Everything goes through a process. Everything is a process. In fact, those of you who are watching online, how did you get here? You had a process. Right? You got up, you turned on your computer, you pushed the right buttons, you hooked up your camera or whatever it is, and here you are. Ta-da! We're together. Spiritual Sunday. Those of you who are here physically, what did you do? You woke up and said, I want to go to Spiritual Sunday, got in the car, drove here, and walked in the door. So here we are. Everything is a process. You ever make bread? Yes. You ever seen bread made? Yes. It's also a process, right? You want to make bread, so what do? You gather the ingredients, you put the ingredients together, and then you process it in order to make bread. What's not a process? Do you remember the first time you went for a job? You want to get a job, right? You're out of college, you're excited. Are you still excited is the big question, right? Or do you wake up in the morning and say, oh my God, I have to go to work again, right? Which is it? Either way, whether you're excited about your job or not, what do you do when you wake up in the morning? You wake up in the morning knowing you've got to get to work, and you go through a whole process. Whatever it is, you wake up, you rub your eyes, you go wash your hands, you get showered, dressed, you have something to eat, grab a cup of coffee, out the door. Then there's the process of driving or somehow transporting yourself to work, right? And then when you're at work, there's a process. You want to do a good job. You want to either for your own growth in the business, or you want to impress your bosses or your supervisors. So you have a process of what you need to do to make greater effort to be more successful. Here's the big one. How about relationships? Uh-oh is right, yes? So what happens? Again, you decide you want a relationship. You're feeling lonely, you're feeling isolated, you're feeling empty, whatever. So you go through a process, do you not? You hear there's a social event. You get all dressed up, you put on your best cologne perfume, you go out and you enjoy, you go to this social event, and then what's the process? You start looking around the room, spying out different people, then you walk over to them, you find a way to get them to come talk to you, but then starts the whole process. Flirting, conversation, making eyes, this, that, and the other thing, until there's a relationship. And if you're looking beyond that, and you want a marriage, then what do you do after you're in a relationship? There's a continued process, because now your goal is marriage. So while you're in the relationship with this person, you're sort of assessing how they behave, how they act, what they say, what they do, how they treat you, how they treat other people, and you start assessing it towards the goal of being married. So there's nothing in life that's not part of a process. Nothing. But what's the goal? So in those cases, you want to get a job. So there's a process you go through to get the job or to stay in the job. There's a process that you go through. You want to feel healthy. Maybe you're not feeling so good physically. So there's a process, how you diet and exercise, et cetera, and you go through that process, right? Yes, that's right. Everything. There is everything has a process. Now, what about life? As we started out, the scientists, if they only look at the theory of evolution, they have no idea what the point is. What's the purpose? It's sort of a random hit and miss. And like we said, survival of the fittest. So all we can look at is then, oh my God, I didn't think of that. Look around the world today. If a person holds by the theory of evolution, then everything that's going on in the world today, in humanity, has to be, according to that theory, of the fittest. Is this the world you want to live in? Is this the way you want to see the next 100, 200,000 years? Yes or no? Okay. Of course you don't. Who wants the chaos? So, what do we teach here from Kabbalah 1 forward? What's the whole purpose of life? The goal of life is transformation. Go through the process. But if you don't know the end goal, if you don't know your purpose, then you get nowhere, right? You don't just get in your car and just drive in circles just for the heck of it because you have nothing else to do. You get in your car having a destination, and then you go through the process of getting there. So we teach from Kabbalah 1 forward. What's the destination? What's the purpose? Why are we here in this world? Why? It's about the process of transformation. We're here to transform ourselves from receivers, from egocentric, self-centered behavior, transforming ourselves into co-creators, God-like beings here in this world. That's our transformation. Those of you who know the terms, from vessel to light, from the desire to receive, transforming in the desire to share and the actions to share. Why? Because as we read from Karen, the only way we are going to have a life of fulfillment is by letting our light shine into the world as God does. Lets its light shine 24/7, infinitely, unconditionally. As Rav Asher calls it, the similarity of form. We want to have all the blessings. We want to have all that fulfillment. We have to act like God all the time. It's a process of transformation. because we come as receivers. How do you know? Let's look at it in a human level. Start with human, babies. If you're keeping in mind, process came from the endless world. We're created as vessels, desire to receive. We come into this world, which is similarly patterned on the endless world. So a baby, how many babies you know come out of the womb and say, hey, mom, how can I help you? Four. Okay. We got somebody who had crazy dreams last night. So you look at kids. What is the nature of kids? And we don't have to think it's evil or negative. It's just their inherent nature. Give me, give me, give me, take care of me. That sort of desire to receive, ego-centered, self-centered, because that's their world. Now, Kabbalistically, what happens when a boy or a girl becomes 12 or 13? There starts to be the awakening of the power of the Creator inside. There starts to be an awakening, an inspiration from inside, a capability actually to transform that desire to receive into a desire and action to share. So ideally, a 12 or 13-year-old who's been in an environment, whose parents have put them in an environment of sharing, Kabbalistic ideas of sharing, going outside their comfort zone to share, helping others, that this is the purpose of life, then ideally at 12 or 13, when that light is awakened inside, they have the capability to act as sharers by overcoming their desire to receive for oneself alone, overcoming the opponent, as we often talk about it, that parasite in our head that tells us to think of ourselves, get for ourselves, as Karen said, judge everybody else as less than us, etc. They have the ability. And that continues, that process of sharing more, sharing more, sharing more, and sharing more, till we're shining our light 24/7 like the Creator. So we become those co-creators in this world. When we achieve that level, what are we called? When you look at people who've achieved that, what do we call them? The Kabbalistic term is a tzaddik, a righteous person. Yes, a righteous person. Somebody who's just shining their light. They can perform miracles, what we would call miracles. That's ultimately the goal of every human being. And this is what I would like to put in our heart and soul right now. Put it in your mind. Because like we said before, if we don't have a goal in mind, how do we expect to achieve it? So then let's remember, our goal is to share and therefore reveal all our light. To whose benefit? If we're shining all our light out in the world, all of that power of the Creator out in the world, not only is our life blissful, but we've caused, as Rav Asher called it, this similarity of form, we've caused the awakening in the heart and soul of every other person out there. And they begin to feel also that desire to remember and to take actions of this process, transforming themselves from desire to receive oneself alone, ego and self-centeredness, to outer-centeredness, love your neighbor as yourself, greater actions of love, kindness, and compassion. What will we have in the end? We'll be living heaven on earth. That's why we talk about being co-creators. Our job is to do here on earth what the Creator did in the endless world, essentially creating heaven. Created our soul, our capacity to receive and benefit from the light of the Creator, and fill us with light. So from the Creator's point of view, everything is blissed out. That's all the Creator knows, is absolute perfection. From our point of view, we see in this world a lot of lack and limitation, a lot of negativity, a lot of destruction. So then our goal, our mission in this world is by acting more godlike, you and me, acting more godlike, we will shine light into the world. We will start awakening the souls and that spiritual memory of other people that they'll start to recall from in their heart and soul. That's their mission also. And they'll begin to see the greater blessing in acting like the light. Now, if you ever seen a manufacturing plant, or you can imagine it, right? There's a process, like the what do you call it? The manufacturing line for cars. So they start out, I don't even know the process. They start out with a few pieces, they start to put pieces together, and the car moves down the line, and people, the workers, add more pieces to it. So let's imagine it comes to the end of the day, and there's cars that are in the middle of the process, right? They manufactured a number of complete cars yesterday, and as they were continuing until the bell rang the end of the day, some things didn't get completed. Okay, do we have the picture? Yes? Yes, you got the picture, the idea? So now imagine the boss comes in the next day, looks at the half-built car, and starts screaming and yelling at all the workers. What happened? We can't sell this. What are you, stupid, you idiots? How could you do this? Maybe I should fire you all. We wouldn't consider that a very smart boss, would we? The boss understands, or should understand, the process. That yes, they completed cars. These are still midway in the process towards completion, being a complete car. So what Rav Ashlag teaches us, and if you want to read it yourself, if you're a little more advanced, on world peace. So he explains, when we look around the world and we see even people behaving in negative ways, it's our work as students of the Kabbalah Center who have access and learning this wisdom, it's our work to look at them and not say, like the boss, what are they, stupid? How could they do that? I guess the Creator made a mistake. However, no, you understand, according to Rav Ashlag, they're in the midst of the process. They're in the midst of the process. They're not complete. Because as we said, what's the completion of our process? Righteous people. Righteous people. So Kabbalah, what we're teaching in the Kabbalah Center is all about the process. But it's always to remember, what did the Creator create? Creator only created tzaddikim, righteous people, perfection. Because the Creator can only create of itself. And if we understand the Creator and the light force to be perfect, then we're created perfect. So then if you and I even look in the mirror, or we look around the world and see people who are not behaving completely God-like, overcoming their fear and their anger and their greed and their jealousy and insecurity, etc., if they're still in those things, then don't start judging them. Like Karen said, don't judge them. Understand they're in the midst of the process. So as Rav Ashlag teaches us, let's help them speed up their process by speeding up our process. We're also in the midst of our evolutionary process spiritually. Yes, we may perceive ourselves a little ahead of other people, but that doesn't mean we're better than them. Because we have to hold that consciousness. God only created righteous people, perfect people. So then what we're here to do is speed up the process. Now, we can let the process go, and it will still be survival of the fittest, as we're going to talk about a little bit here in a minute, right? But our job is, and the whole purpose of the Kabbalah Center, speed up the process. Why wait? Why wait and let pain, suffering, and death to continue longer than it needs to be? Let's you and I speed up the process. So remember the rule, similarity of form. If we want all the blessings that the Creator set out for us, if we want our 100% bliss, the rule number one, if you took Kabbalah 1 recently, if not, go back and review it. Rule number one is to reveal the light, meaning to have all the blessings of what the Creator put inside our soul as potential. If we want to make it actual and have all the blessings, then the rule is to reveal the light, we have to act like the light. Simple, like Rav Ashlag called it, similarity of form. So we have to start looking for ways and means and places, thoughts, ideas, and actions where we are not in similarity of form with the Creator, and then make that transformation. To whose benefit? And this is what we got to keep in mind. Our goal is to be manifesting all our light, to be tzaddikim, righteous people, not just because it's a good thing to do, but let's remember, at that point when we're shining 100% of our light, we probably right now can't even fathom what that level of bliss, peace, abundance, sustenance, happiness, joy, serenity could be. But that's our goal. And so why we call this system Kabbalah, which means to receive, the Rav and Karen Berg taught me, it's ability to transform and strengthen our desire to receive the light. So if our goal is the light, then we're going to drive ourselves faster towards the light because we've come to understand the light is our source of lasting fulfillment. So the end of the process, keep reminding yourself, and it's guaranteed. The end of the process, we have to be a world of righteous people, love, unity, peace, that heaven on earth. So there is a process going on. How many of you can remember ever having such overwhelming pain, discomfort, that you were forced to change some aspect of your behavior or something in your life? Anybody?
Yeah.
Exactly. So pain and suffering will make us change. But what we're learning in the center is how to speed up that process so we don't have to go through those things. But it also means survival of the fittest. And that for me was kind of a revelation that I wanted to share with you today. What does it mean, survival of the fittest spiritually? So think about it now. The survival of the fittest is how we're going to speed up the process of achieving heaven on earth. And what does it mean then? If you do something that's not God-like, how does the universe help us speed up the process? Survival of the fittest, right? If you think about it, in the theory of evolution, right? If an animal evolved to a certain thing, a certain characteristic, and it wasn't enough to survive, and perhaps other animals evolved other characteristics that made it easier to survive, then the ones that had the lesser abilities disappeared, went extinct. The ones that had the greater abilities suddenly were more abundant and could pass on and could continue on their generation, that type of characteristic. So let's think about it. I'll tell you a quick story. As I was making these notes today, I remembered something happened to me, and let's see if you can relate to this. My first job interview. Yes, while I was in college, I also did work. But I didn't have to interview for the job. I worked for my dad. He just said, "You're coming to work, that's it." Okay, so now I'm out of college. It's my first time to actually go and interview for a job. What did I know? I had no concept. Never did it before. Didn't really ask around. So what did I do? I dressed in today, of course, it'd be a little different. You're talking way back in probably the late 70s. So I dressed in like jeans and a button-down shirt. That's it. I went for the interview. Of course, I had a nice resume, whatever. They hired me. So a few months into the job, I was working with another gentleman who was hired about the same time I was. And one day we just got talking about salary or this, and we happened to be open with each other. So guess what? We were doing the same job. We had basically the same resume, the same capabilities, the same experience. He was getting paid more than me. So then, through the discussion, I realized, how did he show up for the interview? Suit and tie, right? Very presentable, shaved this and this. And I realized that was the only difference. So what's survival of the fittest then? I learned if I was going to interview for another job, not to go in jeans and a button-down shirt. Dress up in a suit and tie, maybe even carry a briefcase. Like, look really professional. So in a spiritual way, that was the survival of the fittest. The thoughts that didn't bring me the higher salary, I had to leave them behind. The actions that I did, I left behind. So the universe is helping us to do the same thing, survival of the fittest. So if our goal is to become like God, then what are the more fit thoughts, words, and actions? The ones of anger, the ones of sadness, the ones of resentment, the ones of hatred? Are those going to be survival of the fittest long term? No, because our goal is to act like God. And if those are the opposite of God-like actions, they cannot survive. Does everyone get it now? Unfortunately in life, how does that show up? In a similar way to what I experienced, but thank God it wasn't physical pain. It was a little bit of emotional pain and anguish, right? Because it would have been nice to make a little bit more money along the way. But for some people, look around the world today, those people, like attracts like. So the people who are acting, whether they're conscious of it or not, acting in non-God-like ways, like you and I, to the extent that we do, we end up with challenges, difficulty, pain, uncomfortable situations, obstacles, etc. Because that's the universe's way, in conjunction with our higher self, our pure and perfect self, soul, light being. The two work together to say, look, if you're acting in a selfish way, you're going to attract selfish people and selfish situations, which will show you that it's not fit as a spiritual being created by God to act in selfish ways. If it's fear, if a person is acting fearfully, not a godlike behavior. So the universe will bring a like attract like. It's not random. It's not God punishing. It's like attract like. Our behavior sends energy out. The universe just reflects it back. So if a person acting with fear, then they're going to attract challenges related to that fear. So they'll have acting in a fearful way is not God-like. And then they'll learn through the center how to transform into a more fearless behavior. That's survival of the fittest. So then what do we want to learn here? Survival of the fittest is what kind of behavior? Greater love, kindness, and compassion. Because until we're 100%, there's always more. So don't say, gee, like Karen said, don't judge yourself better than everybody else, even if objectively we may be on a higher spiritual level than all the people around us. But if we're not at 100%, there's always more to go. More love to share, more forgiveness, more tolerance, more generosity, more humility, more kindness, more compassion, always more till we're shining 100%. And the beauty is similarity of form. Like will attract like. So then as you and I are behaving more godlike, what are we going to draw out of the souls of other people? Even the ones who are doing terrible things in the world. We're going to draw the light out of them till they're feeling the discomfort and the pain of their own negative behavior. Then will kick in spiritually, survival of the fittest. They'll realize that all their negative behavior isn't really giving them true light, survival, and blessings. So they will get rid of those, and then even the negative people will start to act with greater kindness, generosity, compassion, care, forgiveness, tolerance. Because remember, the goal is to be God-like. Do we have the capability? Yes, because God only creates righteous people, perfection. So that for me has always been our secret weapon. We know in the heart and soul of everybody is perfection. So our job is just to awaken it. But let's start by awakening it in us. Because the greater awakening in us, the brighter the light shines, everybody's going to be drawn to the light. So more and more people will start to come to this awareness, start to feel those aren't fit for their long-term blessings. And then they're going to change. So now, if we want to speed up the process, and this is what I want to get into a little bit now, we want to speed up the process because the process will be the same. We have to transform from desire to receive into actions of sharing. That's the process, right? Like a child. I mean, think about it. We could say as people grow up, even if they didn't have the spiritual understanding, somewhere along the way they're going to come in some way, unfortunately, some form of chaos. If they haven't learned through their childhood, teenage years, 20s or 30s, how to be sharing, then at some point they're going to hit that physical wall and they're going to realize nothing's continuing. Now, that looks different for every person. Some people, they can have a lot of money but no health. That's not pure and perfect beings of light. Some people will have a lot of health and no money. That's not pure and perfect beings of light. Some people will have money and health and no good relationships, no peace of mind in their relationships. It's also not. God created perfection. Our ultimate destiny is to have blessings in all areas of our life. So don't look at other people and say, yeah, but look at them. They're not spiritual and yet they're successful in business. Yeah, but we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. We don't know what they're feeling. We don't know the trouble they may be having in their family. We don't know the trouble they're having in their own mind. I think I've shared a few different times with you, people that I know, students that I've mentored, been very successful in business. But even though they're successful in business, they still feel miserable. They still feel worthless because that's the thought that they grew up with. That's what they came to believe about themselves. So the success in business was just their way of having some temporary fulfillment. But by the time I met them, it wasn't lasting. They had all the material things, but they didn't have peace of mind. They didn't have a good sense of their self. So you and I can only be responsible for ourselves. And the beauty is, as we transform, we are influencing others to transform. So how do we speed up the process? To become the manifestations of what God created, and therefore have, even if meanwhile it's our own oasis of peace and harmony, our own oasis of heaven on earth. How do we speed up the process? First thing is, embrace the challenges in your life. Ooh, not easy, is it? Embrace the challenges. Don't run away, don't scream and yell, don't fight them. Embrace them as opportunities to realize what we've done in the past, that we needed to have a wake-up call of these experiences. And that's why when I teach Kabbalah 1, I always remind people, pause for a second in that challenge when those sore spots are triggered and think about, identify the emotion you're going through at that moment. Did that challenge awaken anger, jealousy, fear, greed, ego, insecurity? Then that's what you have to transform, not about the other person. If we embrace the challenges, embrace the process, we can speed it up, because then we can identify why is it there. We can get rid of, eject, and reject the negative thoughts, the negative words, the negative actions that put us in those situations, and replace them with more God-like behavior, words, thoughts, and actions. And as we act like God, our light shines in the world, we remove those blockages, we don't have to keep repeating those same situations. So that's one. The second part is, even before the challenges come, can you think right now of any kind of reactive behavior you've got? Any of you out there have maybe a little anger, jealousy, greed, insecurity, fear, guilt, shame? Yes. So then don't wait for the universe in conjunction with your soul brings you those challenges. If you can already admit, which is a sign one of spiritual growth, that you can admit you already have some of these things, jealousy, ego, greed, fear, etc., then run. Run to challenge yourself to enter into a situation or one of the previous situations and then act in its transformational sharing method. In other words, if you're facing insecurity, go run after a situation that you used to feel insecure to act more godlike with the security, not of the ego, security that the light created me perfect and I have what I can share, what I can offer into the situation, what I can do to help others. So run after those opportunities to transform your desire to receive into the actions of sharing. That will also speed up the process, because then you're not waiting for the universe to help you get into the situation that you'll do the same thing anyway, speeding up the process. And then the last part, which is really the power of the center. How do we turbocharge our growth? So let's think of it this way. If consciousness is everything, then consciousness of those things that are beneficial to us, consciousness would demand making use of those things. Simple example. If you happen to be, you've never been on a bicycle or a car or what have you, and you're walking everywhere. And then one day you become conscious that there's this thing called a car, that because of the power of the car that we can direct, you can speed up the process of getting to your destination. If consciousness is everything, what would a truly conscious person do? Continue to walk? No, use a car. That's consciousness is everything. Consciousness doesn't mean, oh, I'm aware there is a car. No, real consciousness, what we in the Kabbalah Center call consciousness, the awareness of the benefit, how it's going to improve our lives. So if a person's really conscious of how a car will improve their life by speeding up the process of getting to places, then obviously they're going to use a car. If they continued walking, then they really didn't have the consciousness of what a car is and what a car can do for them. So then, because we are who we are in the Kabbalah Center, we have from the Rav in Karenberg, to the Rav's teacher, Rav Brandwein, to his teacher, Rav Ashlag, all the way back through all the lineage of Kabbalists, back to the author of the Zohar itself, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. So the purpose of the center to bring the end pain of suffering and death by doing what? Raising people's consciousness about the power of the Zohar itself. The power of the Zohar, the book of the Zohar. So what do we teach? Many of you already understand. We teach from the Kabbalists the power of these things called the Aramaic or Hebrew letters. And what is that power? They are, as Karen always called them, portals, entrance, openings to the upper world, the infinite light. The Rav would call them nanoparticles, meaning they are shining the infinite light of the endless world. Since eyes are the window to the soul, and our soul is already filled, is already active with the pure light of the Creator, then once you understand that the Aramaic or the Hebrew letters shine light, inherently shine this energy of endless, lasting fulfillment, then as we're scanning them, literally looking at them like a barcode scanner with our eyes, we are activating the energy channeled from the Zohar, through the Zohar, into our soul. It wakes up the light in our soul, which then gives us greater power, as we could call it, turbocharging our spiritual process. So then, as we come to that consciousness, like with the car, if a person says, okay, I heard people say about scanning, or I heard people say the books of the Zohar, very powerful, etc. But if they don't really have consciousness of the power and therefore the benefit of it, they're not going to use it. So as consciousness is everything, and you and I are coming to that consciousness of the power of the Zohar itself, then if we really grasp that power, what would we naturally do? We'd be using it more. We'll be scanning it more. We'll be spreading it around the world. If we want to be protected from darkness, what do? What do you do in your house if you want to be protected from darkness? Turn on light, right? You turn on the light bulbs. The light bulbs then remove the darkness. You have clarity. If we want to be protected from the chaos of the world and ultimately bring every human being to that spiritual awakening of their perfection inside and therefore the behaviors of perfection, not only will we scan the Zohar and have it in our houses, we'll be giving it out to people. We'll make sure the world is filled with the books of the Zohar, like those light bulbs, constantly shining light from the endless world, awakening the heart and soul of people around the world. And then as we are turbocharging our spiritual process, what are we doing with everybody else? Speeding up their process. Speeding up their process. Even if it means for some people, first to feel the pain of their negative behavior, to the point then they want to, they have that desire from within to change. Because we're never going to change people from the outside. It hasn't worked in 5,781 years. We're all sitting here 3,400 years from Mount Sinai, when we got the 10, what we call the 10 utterances, but corruptedly they still call them commandments. Thou shalt not steal. So of course, everybody understands that. Even the thief understands the words, thou shalt not steal. Has it stopped the thief from stealing in 3,400 years? No thievery, right? We have no thieves, no robbers. So obviously they don't feel inside them, they don't have consciousness of the disadvantage to themselves of stealing, and on its opposite, the advantage of giving charity, giving tithing, giving away their money. Because as we have that consciousness, we are more willing and do the actions of being more charitable. When we are conscious and aware, thou shalt not murder, or levels of that, commit violence against others. You could tell people all day till you're blue in the face. Didn't stop them from committing acts of violence. But when they feel from inside the pain of their negative behavior, to the point where they come to understand their negative behavior, their violent actions are harmful to themselves, but the opposite, actions of kindness and compassion and forgiveness and tolerance, bring themselves more benefit. When they are, and we are more conscious of that, that we'll behave with greater kindness and compassion and tolerance and forgiveness. So you and I are sitting here today. Oh, in case you haven't heard, because some people still thinking, oh, really, the books of the Zohar? Yes, they shine. Like somebody said, they're spiritual radiation of the light of God. So those of you who have been in Florida for 15 years may have noticed that no hurricanes have touched ground. 15 years. Now, why did that happen? Never happened in history. And in fact, the hurricanes that were heading towards Florida were, some of them did absolutely unnatural things. 90-degree turns, 180-degree turns. How? Well, we believe that starting in the early 2000s, students here in Florida raised money, bought Zohar, and started to go distribute it all along the coastline of Florida for that purpose, letting the light of the Zohar protect from the negativity of hurricanes. And for 15 years, they attacked, they tried to get in, but that protective shield of the light. And yes, just by the Zohar sitting in people's homes, sitting in fire stations, sitting in lifeguard towers, etc., along the coast of Florida, protected it. California, I could tell you for the next hour stories of people who were protected from earthquakes by the Zohar. Here in Florida, had a couple. They lived in, Lake Havasu. Isn't that here in Florida? No? Yes? Okay. Okay. Somewhere up north of here, towards Orlando. I'm mixing, okay, anyway. So they put Zohar, they put pocket Zohars on the windows, right, of their house up there when there was this big wind storm coming. So as they went to go, after the storm settled down, and they went to go look at it, and they're driving around, they saw big tanker trucks overturned. They saw in the neighborhood getting closer to their house, phone lines down, electrical lines down, trees on the people's houses, etc. And guess what? When they got to their house, nothing. No water damage, no trees falling, no fences broken, nothing. Completely protected. It wasn't consciousness, like they're learning. They weren't sitting in the house learning or reading from this. No, the energy of the Zohar itself was protection. So if the mission of the center, as you've come to learn, is to remove pain, suffering, and death, bring the world to its heaven on earth status, then what's the process? Teaching Kabbalah, raising people's awareness, one, of the truth they have perfection inside them, two, the power of these Aramaic letters, and therefore the power of the Zohar in its most powerful combination, and then using and spreading the Zohar around the world. Light, removing all the darkness. So I just want to share with you as we finish today, people say, you've heard this saying, when people give you a blessing, they say, from your mouth to God's ears. You ever heard that? Yes. What does that really mean? What are they trying to say? Oh, you're giving me a blessing? Yes. May God hear it, so God will give it to me. Well, we know God has already given us everything and can only give us perfection. So I would like to change it today like this. My prayer for each of us is that it goes from my mouth to all of our heart and soul, that we will be able to manifest heaven on earth in our generation. God bless. Thank you. Okay, let me do this. So let's just take a moment. We're going to do our, there we go. We're going to do our meditation, our offering. We can only do what you allow us to do. Your generosity determines how fast we can speed up the process. So if anything has inspired you and changed your life about what you hear on Sundays or in the center, then please open your heart and give back that we can continue, right? Even simple, we have to maintain the building. We got to pay the bills. So if nobody's donating, we can't pay the bills. We have to move on in some other way. So yes, I want to appreciate all your generosity and pray that as it multiplies in your life, you will also open your heart to be able to share back even more. So let's just take that moment, whatever your offering is, and I put online the link to give. Just open our heart, open our mind with gratitude, appreciation that the Creator's given us talents and abilities, sustenance, abundance, and resources to be able to have all the good that we have, all the blessings that we have, and knowing that as we share and become greater and greater channels of all those blessings, that more and more of that 100% that the Creator implanted in our soul will be revealed and shining out into our life, blessing us and blessing everybody on earth. And so we inject in this gift, in this offering, our love, our blessings, and opening our heart to see with those eyes of our heart peace on earth, and making that vision so clear in our mind, and opening our heart to do all that we can to bring it into physical reality. That we already begin tasting of our personal Garden of Eden, experiencing our piece of heaven on earth today. Together we say, Amen. So sort of in alignment with this, the question that I got for this week is, what's the 72 names of God? If there's only one God, how does God have 72 names? Well, now if you're getting the gist of it, if we are here to be God-like, co-creators, then whatever your name is, as you become more and more God-like, then in essence, a piece of God, if you will, takes on our name, so that we become the names of God. In the chart of the 72 names of God, if you look at them and you've read the book or you see what they mean, they're different characteristics. If God is infinite, like we even say, what's God-like behavior? Love, kindness, compassion, generosity, humility, and tolerance. Therefore, all of those are names of God. So what you've got in the 72 names are combinations, 3 of those nanoparticles, right? Aramaic letters that shine light, that in that combination, they awaken our soul in those various ways, removing negative thoughts, overcoming depression, awakening abundance, love, kindness, etc. So there are millions of names. In fact, the Kabbalists explain every word of the Zohar is a name of God, because it shines the most powerful light from the endless world into this world. So a name is how we call ourselves or we call people. So the Kabbalists explain then names of God, whether it's the 72 names, whether it's the 42-letter name of God is known as the Ana B'Koach, or it's every word of the Zohar. Those are the names of God, meaning it's through the energy channeled in those names that you and I call upon the infinite Creator and the peace of that perfection in our pure and perfect light beingness, to therefore be able to turbocharge our process of spiritual evolution and transformation from desire to see for oneself alone to the ultimate sharing completely, love your neighbor as yourself. So I want to wish all of you here, all of you who are following along online, an amazing, amazing light-filled week. I look forward to It's hearing the stories. Remember, send me stories of your experiences, what you've experienced with the Zohar, what you experienced through transformation, so we can share it with other people. Have an amazing week, and look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.